Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this final headline act of the first ever Pearson Maths Festival. Bobby and I are so excited and thrilled to have you join us today. As you've seen from all of the social media posts and marketing over the past couple of weeks, all of us here at Pearson and all of the guests that have joined us believe that maths just should be engaging and accessible for everybody. And our aim across this course of festival sessions has been just to allow everybody to come together as a maths community to share stories and amazing ideas of how to engage those students, all of the learners, and especially how we can amplify teaching and the learning experience and to empower all of those involved in maths education. So that's learners, educators, the families and the communities all together. That's why this free conference has been focused on driving conversation, from reflecting upon the recent changes and to sharing best practice and what the future of the maths education could look like. So together with all of you, these conversations will drive how we can help schools, colleges and learners and their families make the most of maths education. So to ensure as many of you as possible can benefit from Bobby and I's discussion today, we're going to be recording the session so you can watch it back and multiple times hopefully. And during the session, everyone that's here live can participate. You can send questions into both of us. You can use the Q&A box if you've got a direct question, or use the chat if you want to just communicate and interact with each other. If we're not able to answer the question live, I will definitely make sure that we can follow up afterwards. So please use that chat function to talk to each other throughout. Also via social media, you can still be part of the ongoing conversation using the hashtag Pearson MathsFest21, and we have loved your Maths Champion nominations. You can continue to do that using the hashtag Maths Champions. If you retweet, I think there's a competition still going. If you retweet using @Pearson Schools or my Twitter page @Emporium Maths, I think there's coffee cups or something like that from Pearson that you can get involved with. Right, Bobby, that's enough from me. But Bobby and I have had a chat before this session, and it's quite clear that the both of us have a very similar goal and objective in life, and that's just to try and celebrate and change people's perceptions about mathematics and to channel our energy and passion for maths. By the means of this snowball effect, if we can change one person's perception and give them a positive experience of maths, then they're going to pass that positivity to their bubble around them and to the generations that follow. And so we all know Bobby. We all know he's incredibly talented and has spent the past few years, after being catapulted into the public domain. You're now ours to watch, Bobby. But he's using that platform, I think, successfully to make this happen on a larger scale. So some of you, I know, there's a lot of us that know Bobby's background, but let's hear from him. And Bobby, tell us the things you've been up to the past couple of months, or what you've got next for the past couple of years. Just tell the audience a little bit about the journey that you've been on.
Yeah, so actually, I'm going to go right back to the very beginning, Nicola. So my parents are from a place called Kerala in South India, and they moved to Britain in the sort of late 70s. So we settled in East London, in Newham. I'm a very proud East Ham boy, hence a West Ham Football Club supporter. And I went to actually a good state school called St Bonaventures in East London. And I got a scholarship to Eton College for my A-levels, which is obviously a very, very different experience. Then I went on to do maths at Oxford and maths and economics at Royal Holloway. But actually my first career, Nicola, was not as a maths teacher. I was working in the city at Lehman Brothers as a trader. And anyone remembers the history from 2008, Lehman Brothers was not a good choice of bank. Bobby, bad choice. And they did collapse. But then I did the same job as a trader, financial markets trader for Nomura, a Japanese bank. And then actually when sort of financial markets looked a bit unstable, I moved to PwC, so PricewaterhouseCoopers, and actually became a chartered accountant. I'm still a qualified chartered accountant. Funnily enough, my dad's like very proud about the maths education work I'm doing, but he's actually most proud about the fact that his son is a chartered accountant. So that's like his number one pride of joy, like Bobby Seagull's chartered accountancy certificate. Forget everything else. But actually, PwC is probably where I will thank for ending up being a maths teacher, because when I was at PwC, normally after people qualify, they spend a little bit of time doing other things like a sabbatical. Some people do the cool thing, like they go to like New York or Sydney or South Africa. I actually did like a mini secondment in the sort of teaching and training department. And I taught new graduates, Nicola, joining the firm. and I absolutely loved the teaching. And to be honest, I enjoyed the corporate work, but it's the teaching that really brought me to life. So I thought like, I really like the teaching. Where can I do this, but not teaching fully grown adults? How about the teaching profession? So I went to Cambridge, did my PGC, did my master's, became a teacher. Actually, initially was a faculty lead in a school in East London. But when I did my master's part-time at Cambridge, I went on a quiz show called University Challenge. And at the time, my aim was, let's do well on it. I like quizzing, I like reading. I didn't expect anything more than just like, in fact, my plastic name tag, I thought I'm going to use that in every single form class. In fact, I remember pinning the plastic name tag from University Challenge onto my classroom door. But then on the show, I went viral, combination of really good knowledge, but more importantly, I think it's my enthusiasm for learning. And even if I got things wrong, I'll be like, okay, that's how I work it out. And I got a couple of math questions wrong, but it's the way I sort of reacted things people quite enjoyed. And the BBC gave me a TV series, and we'll discuss some of those things later on. But for me, it's all been about trying to use that platform for changing attitudes towards maths. Because Nicola, one of the things is when the media often interviewed me, they'll be like, oh, Bobby, what's it like being in the media? What's it like going viral on Twitter? I would sort of acknowledge those questions, but I'd very quickly move it on to, I'd like to use this platform to talk about maths education. And again, I've started my doctorate, Ed.D, part-time, initially looking at maths anxiety, but then moving on to actually now is like maths anxiety, but the interplay with the media and how the media actually can play positive and negative roles in changing attitudes towards maths. So that's all like, that's longer than I wanted to be, but that's like my background and my story.
It's like an incredible, how can you try and sum up that kind of journey in like a couple of minutes? It's so incredible. And I like that you mentioned PwC. I've been talking to those guys this week about, exactly these conversations that we're going to have today. So it'd be interesting to see if there's something we can do with PwC moving forward. But as I mentioned earlier, like we've got similar objectives and part of the plan to engage young people, even adults that are trying to achieve their GCSE. We're not talking about just teenagers or young people in school, but the plan to engage people into a positive experience means that you're using this platform to celebrate, maths in probably places that people don't. I can see maths everywhere, and that's easy for us to say as mathematicians or teachers, but not necessarily in the fields that people would recognise them. So because this is the headline of a festival, let's celebrate all of these things. Let's talk about the exciting things. BBC Breakfast, doing podcasts or presenting and interviewing people, I get everything I've learned from Naga. I love Naga Manchetti. She's one of my absolute favourites. But BBC Breakfast, was it interesting for you? How did we end up being a new member of Little Mix? You do work with Strictly, the Bidmas thing on Jeremy Vine, that went viral, and I think people are still talking about that. But and of course the Answer Trap, 30 episodes of the Answer Trap. So I haven't finished. There are so many things, but what's been the highlight for, over the past year when it's been really difficult? Are there things that stick out in your mind? And, why do you feel it's important to get involved in these sorts of things?
Yeah, actually, when you mentioned that, there are a lot of different things there. But again, the weaving thread is actually trying to get in maths into every appearance. If I had to pick like a favorite, I'll come to my favorite in a second, but my second favorite was actually when I was on BBC Breakfast talking about World Password Day. So looking at combinations and permutations of passwords, and like if you've got 4 letters, how many passwords if you've got 5 letters, 6 letters. But when I was brought on, I think I was brought on about 7:55, and just before me, Little Mix were introducing their new album or the new tour. And then they said, so Jade, what are your plans for the next few months? And instead of Jade, I didn't see this because you can't see what's going on screen. Suddenly I was there on screen. And then I ended up having a little bit of banter with Little Mix on social media. And they've agreed, if they need a mathematical member of their band, or they need someone to work out their, number of Instagram followers, I'm willing to do the maths for them. But that was like a amusing little thing. And again, I think it's one of those things, using it as a way to talk a bit more about maths. Because when that happened, people were like, oh, Bobby, I saw you had that little mix up with Little Mix. And I talked about, Little Mix, mathematics. I think I made some really bad maths jokes, but I'm getting people to engage. And then some Little Mix followers started engaging with me about mathematics. So I think it's finding those little opportunities.
Yeah.
But I think the appearance I've done in the last 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 months that I've enjoyed the most is probably actually the Strictly It Takes Two. So every Friday during the Strictly series, they get like a celebrity panel, people talking about the dancers, how they feel. And obviously, most of it's quite a qualitative experience about how you feel about the dancers, what do you think about them. But I tried to bring it to maths. And I was very clear on like, I'm going to bring on Seagull Strictly Stats. So whenever they talked about a dancer, I would say, if you look at Jamie Lang, he's gone from 15th to 12th to 8th to 3rd to 2nd. So like talking about in a sort of numbers perspective. And a lot of people watching Strictly, they actually are involved in numbers. When you tell them, actually, you're using maths and numbers, they're like, oh, actually, it's not like a big scary monster. So for me, that was probably the highlight. And the fact that I managed to sneak on a math shirt onto the set. So I wore a blue jacket. I wore actually my math scholars badge. So there's something called the maths teacher training scholarships. I wore my mathematical scholar badge, but I wore a yellow shirt, Nicola, that said, I love maths, but the I was the square root of -1 and with a heart. And I explained in a very quick sentence, imaginary numbers on Strictly. So for me, that was like, yeah.
It's just about, it's that shoehorning in the least expected areas, and like you said, even little mixed fans that maybe have never seen you or heard of you or even anything that you're involved in. Yeah. I bet they Googled you and thought, oh, that guy's cool. Let's have a look and see what he's doing. So that's brilliant. It's exactly right. Of course, like I can't pick up anything. When I was having a look through everything you've been involved with in the past kind of 12 months, it's really difficult to try and get everything and cover everything in just such a short space of time. But what about, the book, the life-changing magic of numbers? Yeah, love it. I know it disappears. It's so it's magic. It disappears. How's that going? What's been the feedback like on the book?
So interestingly, I'll tell you something about the feedback for the book in a second, but the title itself. So obviously it's mostly about how maths has changed my life. So I look at football stickers, listening to music, cooking, sport, my time management, even dating, like looking at maths and all sorts of aspects of my life. But when we were coming up with the title with Penguin, they weren't very keen on putting the word maths on the front cover, because they thought if you put maths as the main title, people are going to think, oh, it's a maths book. Whereas they thought, numbers, people aren't as scared about numbers. So when they did the initial book, the hardback, it says the life-changing magic of numbers. But for the paperback, which comes out like a year later, they finally put a subtitle that says how maths shapes everyday life. So they eventually conceded as a subtitle. But that's really fascinating about how even the word maths, the book is actually about maths in different parts of my life, but the word maths, they're like, oh no, we can't put that as a front title.
Oh my goodness. That would hurt my heart, that you're trying to promote something so positive about this whole world of mathematics, and yet the publishers are saying, oh, we can't put the word maths on the front.
I know. It's
incredible.
It just shows you like what we've got to do to try and change attitudes as teachers, as educators, as people, our parents out there. We've got to, there's a big role in changing how the public think about the subject.
Yeah, completely. And the book's great. The book's amazingly great. I might have to post mine to you, and you can put a signature in it and post it.
Oh yeah. No, we'll have a drink. We'll have a mathematical drink over summer.
Yeah, let's do that. Get you to sign my copy. But the podcast, like obviously, I've spoken and worked with Susan Okereke, who you do podcasts with, and do the maths thing. I just want to signpost them so people, as they're looking back on this, can kind of have a little Google and have a listen to those podcasts. But the particular part about those podcasts I like is how you weave a puzzle, a challenge in there for people to have a go at. So yeah, guys, have a look at Bobby's podcast with Susan. They're amazing. But of course, this ongoing visibility in the media and trying to promote maths as a strand within popular culture is all great. But let's talk about the platform with the Financial Times. This is all great to talk about Strictly and, dating apps and Love Island and Bake Off. But let's talk about the serious side. You are a mathematician. You're a credible, very intelligent mathematician with lots of background experience. I've been a reader of the Financial Times since way before uni. I used to get the bus on a Saturday afternoon and spend my afternoons in the library, reading maths books and Financial Times. But I never thought I would be reading the Financial Times about Love Island as a grown-up. So how did you get that in? How did you manage to shoehorn popular culture into something that's perceived to be so, serious, if you like?
So actually, I'll go back to the story, Nicola. It's interesting about you reading the FT. I used to read the FT as well, but actually, when I read the FT professionally for my job, so in the morning I'd read it on the train in commuting to Canary Wharf. But on the way back, I would have FT, but inside I have a Heat magazine on the way back. That's my confession to the Pearson Maths Festival. Don't judge it.
My kitchen at university used to have torso of the week to decorate the kitchen. There's no shame in Heat magazine, definitely.
Yeah, I think that the great thing is, like, I'll come back to the FT in a second, but to show that mathematicians were real people, because sometimes our students, our friends, even fellow teachers think that mathematicians were like these maths teachers, were these strange people. But we obviously love maths, but we're normal like everyone else. They have the same interests and same hobbies and same passions. So for the FT, when they approached me, so actually they approached me, I was speaking at a conference about the impact of math skills on numeracy and how numeracy can link to people's ability to understand personal finance. So they said, "Oh, Bobby, this is back in, I think, end of 2017. We'd love you to write for us talking about the importance of maths and personal finance and the link," because obviously their readers are often sort of concerned about how they can improve their finance, their wealth, etc. And my first few articles were all about, like, very clearly linked with maths, numeracy, personal finance, like very direct links. But then as I got more confident, like I guess in any field, whether it's in school or media, I thought, like, actually, I'm going to bring in a bit of my personality into it. And I suggested to my editor saying, "Oh, do you watch Love Island?" She's like, "Oh, a little bit sometimes. I know what it's about." And I'm like, Love Island actually strangely there's lots of numbers, and there's ways in which you vote for contestants. There's the Instagram counts of followers that contestants have. There's the economics of how much money they set to make from each series. Let's do an article, a column about that. And at first, like, I think my editor, to be honest, my editor's great. She's a lady called Claire Barrett, and she does a lot of stuff trying to popularize personal finance and making personal finance seem sexy as well, because personal finance, to some people, pensions seem a bit dry. So she's doing the same for personal finance. So then we got the article out there, and then the engagement was amazing. FT readers, like, actually, it's a great way to engage with people about numbers in a unusual context, because Love Island actually has one of the best audience reaches with the millennial crowd. So, like, the 18 to 35, I think I've fallen out of that crowd now. Oh God, in a separate Love Island.
We can fall out of it together. It's fine.
Yeah.
It's fine.
But in that audience, like 50% of people aged 18 to 35 have watched at least one episode of Love Island. So clearly there's an audience for it. And if you can, again, use an FT column to show people actually something that's very popular, actually there's maths and numbers, economics in there, it just gets people engaged. And then I think it's about, again, changing conversations, because there would have been people who read the article who maybe at their water cooler, around work, or whatever environment they are, they're like, "Oh, did you read that column? Oh, yeah, I never thought about the fact that Love Island, there's numbers there." And again, it sounds like a silly example, but in Love Island, there was one scene where they had to, like, judge each other's kissing 1 to 10. But with that, you've got a lot of statistics there. You can look at how do you rank people. Is mean the best? Is arithmetic mean the best way of judging someone? Or is it range? Or is it the median value? So you've got these, again, something that's like maybe like some people call it a silly show, but there's ways of using that to engage people, I think.
Yeah, completely. And even, as I left the classroom at Christmas, so I used to try and find anything that was happening in the real world that would try and engage my teenage students. Love Island wasn't really around as much, and I'm quite conscious of not bringing Love Island to the younger years.
Yeah, exactly.
Things like, I don't know, it might have been like Strictly, they always talk about, oh, the average salsa score is this, and you got this, so how do you feel about that? Or the last time that, I don't know, Katia did the salsa, she got a 10, and do you think they always talk about the maths behind it without actually realizing it. But I think it's important, and as much as, okay, it's fun, and some people, it's a bit trashy TV, it's mind numbing, you can use this popular culture or these platforms and bring them into the classroom, be it the football, You can use football statistics. I definitely used, the tennis. We would always have a maths competition about the tennis, or looking at the statistical analysis behind the Oxford and Cambridge boat teams.
Yes.
And I would get them to use the statistics and analyse the data, and then they would predict who would be the winning team. And then I'd play the last race, like last year's race, and they were screaming and shouting at the screen to be like, come on, Cambridge, because they'd done the maths behind the work and convinced themselves they'd found the better team. But bringing those silly things in just generates that love. And even if you're not into, I don't know, the tennis, for example, bring in some strawberries. Like, bring in some strawberries to your class, and they're like, what's going on? Well, it's Wimbledon. Let's have some strawberries while we're doing some maths. And they'll be like, oh, okay. But going into the world, the chalk face, your teaching role, very significant, of course, to the role that you're trying to have within the media. And obviously with your, the doctorate, you're still 100% engaged with students and people that are listening to this afternoon or watching this afternoon. They can completely, empathise completely, or you can with the audience, and know all of the barriers that young people have been facing across their maths journey. And I know that the concept of maths anxiety, as you picked up on it earlier, is something really close to your heart, and your research work is around that theme. And we had a festival session earlier, last week actually, on maths anxiety, and definitely something that Susan Okereke and I have spoken about. So what do you see in and around the classroom that indicates these ongoing negative perceptions, ongoing anxiety? And actually the biggest question for us, for all of us, and guys that are watching and involved, pop into the chat function. How do we tackle it? What are you seeing in the classroom, and has it been exacerbated by the changes? How do we tackle this, Bobby?
So maths anxiety, there's the various sort of academic definitions, but the one that I use in public is quite a reasonably straightforward one. It's about the negative emotional experience that people encounter when dealing with maths and numbers, be in the classroom for our school children, or for adults in the real world. For example, when facing a restaurant bill. We've all had that moment, the bill comes around. And as maths teachers, it will probably, Nicola, myself, it will probably come to us. But even myself, when that bill comes around, I'm like, better get it right. But with maths anxiety, I think it stems from two parts, from my experience and my research. So partly it's to do with competence. Obviously, if you don't feel competent in it. But secondly, it's to do with the attitude. Do you think that maths is something that's for everyone, or do you think it's meant for like an elite part of the population? So interestingly, I do a lot of work with the charity National Numeracy, and actually recruited this year. So again, their job is to change the perception of maths with adults in the country, and their competence as well. And I managed to recruit 2 people this year. Again, popular culture. Firstly, I recruited Peter Sawkins, the Bake Off champion, because again, he's actually doing accounting and finance at Edinburgh University. I thought there's a clear link there. He likes numbers. Baking's all about numbers, ratios, etc. And then the second person I recruited was, again, from my time on Strictly It Takes Two, not the show itself. That's coming in a couple of years. Cathy Jones, one of the dancers. I found out that she loves maths. So I did an Instagram live in lockdown 1 about maths, and then she joined in and she was taking part in the questions. I'm like, oh my God, Katya loves maths and numbers. And again, with Katya, we did maths and dance sessions where she taught me a bit of a dance. It didn't go very well, but I taught her some maths tricks, but it got her followers to engage with maths. And actually the one key thing that she told me about maths and maths anxiety is that people often think of maths, this is Katya's words, as like a big scary monster, because they're like, oh my God, there's maths, the thing that I couldn't do at school. But the key message about maths, and again, this is how to tackle maths anxiety, is to tell our students, our fellow teachers, the parents that we teach, is that maths is a skill, like driving or baking or dancing. No one is born being able to drive like Lewis Hamilton. No one's born being able to bake like an amazing meringue tart, or no one's born being able to do salsa. To be honest, I did a salsa lesson last week. I don't think I'm made for salsa anyway, but no one's born with these skills. And I think the same thing in mathematics. We're not born with a skill set to do maths. We learn maths in primary, in secondary, as adults. And I think because people have had negative experiences, they think they can't do it. And even in my class, I like to think I'm like quite an engaging teacher. But with my students sometimes, so we had our end of year assessments recently, and we were doing some practice, and I was handing out worksheets. And this happens pretty much every week in my classes. No matter how good a teacher I think I am, I'll pass out the worksheet, and a few students will go like, can't do it. I can't do it. But and I say, but you've not even looked at the worksheet. And that clearly is a case of maths anxiety, where they think, oh, they couldn't do something before, maybe in year 6 or maybe in year 7 or year 8. And now they're bringing that negative experience with them. And I think changing attitudes to maths is a big part in that. And I think as teachers, what can we do? One is, I think, with our fellow teachers, because even though there might be an amazing teacher in languages or music or PE, they themselves might have struggled with maths. And when kids talk to them about, oh, sir, I'm looking to do music tech at university, and then the teacher might inadvertently say something about, oh, maths, it's not that important. So it's about actually helping to change attitudes of other teachers, because if they can speak positively about maths, that makes a difference. Secondly, I think our parents, the parents of our students, because we've all been as teachers to parents' evenings where a mum or dad will say, oh, I couldn't do maths at school, that's why my son or daughter's failing. But maths is not, there's not a gene that passes on. There might be one, but I've not read anything about it, that passes on from parents to their children. So we need to make sure we tackle in a positive way, not in a negative positive way, tackle parents and help them to engage with maths. Again, in my school, again, it's something, it's early days, we started getting parents in from our local feeder schools and secondary school, bringing them in once a term to look at some basic math skills, so that parents can think, oh, actually, they use math skills when they're out shopping or out baking or planning their household budget, and making them think, actually, next time they talk to their child about maths, I'll be more positive. Because I think with maths anxiety, it's not like it doesn't happen in a vacuum. It's not that child operates in a family, in a class, in a society. So it's about trying to change all of that. And again, it's going to take all of our efforts here together, all of us watching, years and decades, but bit by bit we can chip away at it, I think.
Yeah, I think you're completely right. And there's not anything in what you just said that I disagree with. And I actually completely agree with the idea that maths is a skill. You're not born completing, solving equations, or, you have to be taught that skill and you have to practice it. And I used to use the same analogies all the time. David Beckham couldn't kick that ball that well without practicing. It's taken him years. Usain Bolt did not run the 100 meters in 9.6 seconds the first time he did it. He's done it a million times to get to being as brilliant as he is. So they used to think, it's, oh, okay, yeah, she's making kind of some sense here. Maybe I just need to practice. But you're right about that, not even looking at the assessment and just throwing it away, because I used to have students that would quite openly say, well, it can't be a failure if I haven't even tried. So if I don't try it, then I can't fail it. So I'm just not going to bother. And it's so upsetting. And it's as a teacher, it's having that confidence and that trust and the relationship between you and the students. I used to say, I'm never going to give you something that I feel you can't do. I'm here to help you. I'm here to get better. I'm not here to catch you out or trick you. I'm here to teach you. So just have a go and see, what you can do. And we're all in that boat, about recognizing it. But as Susan and I were talking about this in our last podcast, we were saying it's recognizing that anxiety, recognizing that maybe they're just a bit off, and saying, it's okay. What is it? What's going on? What can I help with? Why are you feeling that way? And once you recognize it, then you can start to take down the barriers. Trying to link the two things together, the celebration of maths in popular culture and the classroom. Do you feel it's filtering into the classroom? Obviously we're all one-man bands at doing this and bringing it into our own individual classrooms. But how do you, we've talked about it already, and someone in the chat said they have a fantasy, they run a Key Stage 2 fantasy football maths club, which I think is amazing. And I've mentioned the boat race and Wimbledon, but what do you do, or what can others do to promote all this that's not going to take hours? Because at the end of the day, these things take a while to plan. But any quick top tips on what people can do? Yeah,
so to be honest, it is tricky. I think there's a combination of short little things that you can do and the longer term stuff. So short little things are often, if you're just doing a lesson, and for example, I was teaching yesterday year 7s. They said, sir, can we just watch some videos? I'm like, no, we're still doing a lesson. So we're doing something about percentages. And then I think this is where it requires you to just keep your eyes open to see what's been happening in the news, and literally just drop an example in. So we're looking at percentages, and I said, most of you have been watching the football recently. At the weekend, Wembley had 60,000 people, if technically had more than that, but 60,000 people out of 90,000. Let's work out percentages of capacities of stadiums. So Wembley, I think the first couple of games were at 25,000, then 40, then 60,000. So then, because students are like, they thought in their heads they're doing football, but actually they're just doing percentages. So that requires you to sort of be quick thinking on your feet. So that's more just keeping your eye out. I think social media for Twitter. Social media can be a mixed bag because sometimes it can be quite negative. But I think with maths, it's a great source of like ideas and inspiration. There are amazing people out there, maths teachers that are sharing resources. And that's the one thing. Sometimes you feel like you want to own something, create your own resource, which is fine. But other times, don't reinvent the wheel. There's amazing resources that teachers have. And then teachers, one of the great things that generally they're really positive about sharing things because they love the idea of their work being used by other teachers. So don't be afraid to leverage other people's resources on social media. But the second thing is try and also start working with your department. So in my school, we've got like a separate folder like called investigations, like fun bits of maths. So for example, a couple of teachers and I, we watched the film. You have heard of Imitation Game?
Yes.
Yeah. So Imitation Game is a great film with Benedict Cumberbatch about Alan Turing, how code breakers cracked the Enigma code and ended World War II early because of that and saved millions of lives. So we found some lessons. One of my head of department, he had a lesson that his wife had taught another school about code breaking. And then we managed to link the two together and we sort of told kids, watch bits of the Imitation Game. And then we did a lesson about code breaking. And now it's a resource that teachers, if they want a fun maths lesson that has a different skill, because code breaking is not technically part of the syllabus, but it's something that engages children. And now that resource is there permanently. So I think it's about, as a department, and that took a bit of time to create, a few iterations where we edited, changed things, but now we've got this resource there. So I think it's a combination of, one, keeping your eyes peeled for things that you literally spot. And again, one example is I listened to a lot of music and I tried to get music references in. So we were doing a lesson about averages and I brought in the charts. And then I remember my younger students were into a lady, she's only 18, Olivia Rodrigo. She's number one, like the youngest person to be number one in the charts and the albums. And I did a little portion looking at the lengths of her songs, comparing it to some other older pop stars. And actually her songs are really short because younger people have shorter attention span. And I told my younger students, they got a bit upset, but I'm like, look, we're just seeing a comparison, the average length of Olivia Rodrigo songs versus, I don't know, The Killers or Queen.
Queen's Bohemian Rhapsody.
Oh my God, yeah.
Minutes,
Most students are going to listen to like 6-7 minutes of those. Yeah. But I think it's like a combination of like keeping your eyes peeled for things that are happening day to day, but then longer term things like you had your boat race, your Wimbledon, they're going to turn up and try and pin a lesson to that.
Yeah, I think that's a really good idea as well about coming together as a team and saying, even if one person over the year, not to have it running instantly, but to say, do you know what, for next year, let's have something, let's all find something that we can put together as a resource. And then, like you say, once you've got it, you've banked it and you can tweak it. There are classics. I used to use the Imitation Game all of the time. And I used to even have a display in my classroom called Maths in the Media. Quite funny enough. Yeah. But it was all the different movies, where you just wouldn't expect. I think someone on Twitter has already tweeted us during this session about, have you seen X plus Y? Of course.
I love that film.
And just even when I was getting my students into UKMT and the kangaroo and getting their badges and stuff, they had no idea what this was. And I was like, we need to watch the movie. And we would watch it in parts, as treats, when they always turn up and say, can we watch a movie today? But I would watch 10 minutes every other week as a reward if something or other, if you guys behave and you can get through this, then I'll treat you to another bit of the movie. But it's injecting all sorts of stuff from all walks of life into the lessons, which I think you can do quickly. And even things like that with the song lengths, that could be a starter. It could be a play just to hook them in and engage them. And, just seeing that on the board thinking, what's that on the board? That sounds interesting. And I bet their pencil cases come out a bit quicker. So as we get to the final part of today, I think it's important that, people have been putting into the chat about, people have been asking for the links to the podcasts and your book as well. But obviously, let's give everyone an opportunity to put in the chat about what happens next. How can we continue to share this enthusiasm and celebrate the beauty of maths next year. You know, we're hearing today, even in the playgrounds and school car parks today, bubbles are popping. We're uncertain about what next year is going to bring. So what are you planning to do next year? You know, who knows what's going to bring, but what's the plan to continue this snowball effect and of positivity? What can I do? You know, here at Pearson, I'm putting this out to everybody. What can we do at Pearson? What can Bobby do? What can we do to help? I did make a note on my note saying I think you should go into the jungle next, Bobby. And
before the strictly ballroom first, then the jungle.
Strictly ballroom first, yes. Or you wouldn't catch me in the jungle. But let's have a little chat about what it is we can do. What do you think, Bobby? What's the plan for next year with your students and celebrating the beautiful mathematics that it is?
Yes, that is, because actually literally last night before I left, I went and popped in. I think a lot about teaching is about personal relationships with other staff in the school. So I popped into the geography offices, where the science office and the design technology office. And before lockdown, so things have been very different in the past since March 2020. That feels like a lifetime ago, but March 2020. But before that, in my school, we started experimenting with getting maths teachers to help teach bits of lessons of other subjects that were relevant to us. So for example, with design technology, in their exams, they have to learn about interpreting data to do with charts, bar charts, pie charts, with geography similarly, and then science, again, interpreting different types of charts for physics or chemistry experiments. And we did a bit before lockdown, but my conversation with some of my teacher friends in different departments yesterday was, next year, obviously, we don't know what the future is going to hold, but we're hoping things will open up a bit. If they do, my department, maths department, we'd love to help support the way you teach things. Because what you often find, again, so many teachers will probably identify with this, is that students will go to a science lesson and they're literally like, when they draw a graph, they literally just like freestyle the axes, they get everything, they don't put the zero in the right place, and they're like making some sort of freehand like correlation, they're making up stuff, no title. And then the science department, right, they come to us and go, Mr. Seagull, what is your department doing? They're like, it's your fault. And I think it's not about blaming anyone, but I think it's with kids, and to be honest, adults, we compartmentalize learning. We like going to the maths lesson, and there's Miss Woodford-Smith, so she's teaching us graphs. Now going to science, oh, we haven't done graphs. We've never done graphs in my whole life. But they clearly have with Miss Woodford-Smith in the last lesson. So, but if they see a maths teacher in a science lesson doing that 5 minutes, they were like, oh yeah, it's the same thing. So in my school, we're making a deliberate effort to try again. Different schools have different words for it. I think some people call it numeracy across the curriculum, maths across the curriculum. But if you can show students that maths doesn't just exist within the maths lesson, it exists in the outside world, whether it's Wimbledon, the boat race, football, Strictly, Love Island, whatever it is, or more practically in other subjects that they see in school, in geography, in PE. And again, I see someone saying that they call it subject integration. It just means that the young people, it connects up all the dots in their mind. So I think that for me, that's going to be the big thing that we're going to try in my school, to try to integrate maths more across the curriculum. So kids don't just see maths 3 to 4 times a week, but they see it across all the other subjects. So that's for me the challenge.
Yeah, I think I was having a conversation, actually multiple conversations about this the other day, and it's that classic question from the students that say, when am I ever going to need this? Like, what is the point of working out these, you know, reverse percentages or something like that? And I think I was saying, do you know what would be amazing is to have like a guest speaker turn up to your classroom, and it's Mr. Jones from the kitchen who makes your lunch every day, that's going to tell you the maths he uses, and just comes in for 10 minutes and says, this is how I use maths in every day downstairs and how, you know, producing lunches. And then the following term, guest speaker today is, I don't know, Mr. whoever from PE. Because, you know, you get those students like, oh, I want to play basketball. I'm not, you know, I don't need maths. Really? Do you want to come and have a look at the maths that's involved in the basketball leagues and stuff? So that's something that I was talking to some other centres about, you know, how about just talk like you've done? Talk to the other people in your school and say, you wouldn't mind having, you know, a little nominee from your department that will come along, or even just video themselves. You know, we've all got used to that over the past 16 months, and then put that up as a little starter. Or here's a question from Mr. Jones in PE or something. Yeah, Maisie's just put in the chat, some students only see maths in maths lessons and don't connect it. Absolutely. And the curve thing used to drive me bonkers. And the science people would be banging on my door as like head of maths, bang, bang, bang. Your students, yeah, my students, not our students, your students can't draw a curve by the time they get to year 11. And you get out that book and you're like, exhibit A, yes, they can. But you're right, Maisie, and all of us have experienced it. But I think that's that could be a really quick email, a group email to other heads of department, or something to say, it doesn't have to be. I think people think the work can get bogged down and write new schemes of work, or it could be a really simple fix, like let's just record a video, or could someone just pop in for 10 minutes? It doesn't have to be anything embedded into the curriculum, but yeah, I think that's a great one. Subject integration. I love the math connotation in that as well, that you're integrating subjects. It is challenging, I get that. But yeah, so useful. So anything, Bobby, as we wrap up in these last kind of few minutes, anything exciting coming up soon that you can share?
So some things I can tell you directly. Other things I have to be a bit coded. So the direct one is I filmed Would I Lie to You? And it's coming out in September in time for the new school year. But the great thing is, I hope they don't edit it out, but I end up having a chat about prime numbers with Lee Mack and David Mitchell. So this is like, so those haven't seen it before, it's like a Friday night BBC One comedy show. I'm there like in my capacity as a maths teacher, but obviously there's non-math stuff that goes on, but trying to weave in maths, that'll be a really fun thing that comes out. And there's another, this one I'm trying to say, so I'm taking part in a reality type show that is not strictly You're the Masked Dancer, but it might involve dancing. That's what I can say. It's a new one. It's not been done before, so you can't like Google dance shows, but it's not there. It's not been done. So I'm taking part. Again, some of the stuff I do, I realize, there's not a direct correlation to maths communication. But what it does give me is it gives me a greater authority to talk about maths. Because, like Jamie Oliver, for example, obviously he's a famous chef and selling books and stuff. But then when he wants to talk about, let's not have fatty foods on the school diet, or sugary foods, or again, something you may not agree with. He might talk about like taxes on certain food items, but he has that ability to have the conversation because he's got a higher profile. So like, while I definitely enjoy some of the things I do that are not maths related, it allows me to have a greater profile to talk about maths, I think. Yeah,
and it raises the awareness of maths, and like we're trying to promote here that you might see the mathematician reading the Financial Times, but secretly there's a Heat magazine. I'm totally going to use that now. So obviously we're going to record a podcast, our podcast here at Pearson, the maths team, The Right Angle. Bobby and I are going to be recording it next week. We're going to give you the summer off.
I think The Right Angle.
Yeah, I love that. Oh yeah, cool move. So we're going to give everyone the summer off and no podcasts, as there's enough for you to listen to on the beach if you manage to get to a beach this summer. But we're going to pick up on some of these themes that we've talked about today. Particularly, we'll talk about maths anxiety. I feel that might be exacerbated come September after the break. And I think, Bobby, we talked about in the beginning, people celebrating their maths champions. So I'd like you to have a think about who your maths champions would be. And we'll talk about that in the podcast so people can join in and find out who you think that is.
Can I say you? Can I say you?
Of course you can. That is the answer. Brilliant. And you still have to say that in the podcast. So yes. So thank you, Bobby, for joining us today as part of this Maths in the Media festival session. I'm sure there's people watching in and have found it interesting. We weren't here to be, uber serious about, the maths education, but just celebrating it. And it's a Friday afternoon and the sun is shining and lots of people are breaking up and finishing after such a tough year again. There will be a feedback survey open in the browser when we finish. So if you guys out there can just take a couple of minutes to complete that would be really good. And just finally, we want to remind you again about the ongoing conversations. You'll see Bobby and I on social media here, there and everywhere, just sharing things, but you guys can get involved as well using the hashtag Pearson Maths Fest. And as I've said to Bobby about those maths champions, nominate those maths champions. It's not over and you're still working on the front line and trying to inspire those young people, but nominate away. Bobby, thank you again for your time this afternoon.
Oh, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure.
Hope you enjoy the sunshine when it gets there. So from both of us, everybody, please do take care, good care of yourselves, and have a very well-deserved, fantastic summer break.
Right angle.
Right angle.